Hi, good morning. My name is Joanna Nelson, and I'm with the New Mexico Economic Development Department. Thank you so much for joining us. You have tuned in to a webinar series that we host every month. We cover financing topics as well as programs that can assist small businesses in New Mexico. Today, we are going to focus on doing an introduction to government contracting. Before we get started, I wanted to raise a few points. This webinar is being recorded, so we will send a link out to all. There's a little bit of a feedback. I'm not sure where that's coming from. Sorry about that. Chris, I'm not sure where that noise is coming from. If you could mute yourself.
Yes.
Would...
Yes, sorry. I'm looking for the
problem.
button. Forgive me.
Sure. Yeah, there should be an audio. You see an audio title to the side of the screen and just press mute. Okay, I think that worked. So to continue, we will have this live recording up on our YouTube channel. We'll send the link out via email. We also will send out a PDF of the presentation. So we will be having live links that you will see throughout the presentation, and you will be able to access those in the PDF. Please, as we go along, write down questions, any questions that come to your mind in the questions box, and we will get to those at the end of the presentation. So I did want to give a little bit of a background about very, very quickly about some of the programs that NMEDD is administering during the COVID-19 response. Just a very, very quick overview. We do have a business loan guarantee program. This is for businesses who have been negatively impacted by the coronavirus. And you can, if you're getting a loan or a line of credit with a bank, we can guarantee up to 80% of that principal or up to $50,000 of the principal. We also have a LEDA 0% interest loan program. If you are a qualified entity, you can participate in that program, and the funds can be used for land, building, infrastructure, or in the case of current needs right now, lease abatement or mortgage assistance. So please reach out to us if you think any of these might be a fit for your business right now. We also have the Buy for Tomorrow Today program. This is to help small businesses generate cash flow. You can list your business on this website, and customers can purchase gift cards at your business to help generate cash. And then also and it's free to participate in that. And I also wanted to mention some upcoming webinars. In fact, today, I think it is Key Partnerships in your business mix. That's being hosted today by the New Mexico Main Street Department. As well, tomorrow we're going to be doing an update on the federal funding programs. We'll be doing that in Spanish and in English tomorrow. And then next month, we will have New Mexico Finance Authority give an overview of their new business finance programs. So hope you can join us for those. And I do want to remind everyone to complete your 2020 census. This is extremely important for New Mexico. Please participate. Here's a list of our contacts. You can see our website. You can locate your regional reps. This is the link to our YouTube channel. One of our speakers is going to explain opportunity zones. This is the link to our New Mexico Opportunity Zones website. And here is my contact. Let's go ahead and get started. I'd like to introduce Stephen Hogan, who is a PTAC advisor. Stephen, if you can go ahead and get started.
Yes, thank you, Joanna, and I appreciate this opportunity to share with a number of interested people here the basic introduction to government contracting. Let me get everything working here. Okay, so normally this particular presentation is part of a workshop that runs at least 2 hours. So I'm going to be flying through these slides because I've also added a few things that are relevant to the current pandemic situation that we're in. And I think those are important to spend a little bit of time talking about. Also, take note of our URL there, www.nmptac.org. You can go to that site and reach out to any of the counselors for additional information on any of the topics. We have several counselors, and I'll get into more about our locations and how we're set up towards the end of the slides. But we can certainly help you with more detail on any of this. Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Chris, if you can hear us, I'm not sure if there's a little bit of a muffled scratching noise coming. I'm not sure if that's coming from your audio. So just want to point that out to any of the panelists. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I had mute on. Thanks.
Okay, we good to go?
Yes, go for it.
Okay, so typically when we do our workshop, we ask these questions up front, and really it's just, I don't know how many people in the audience here are already doing government work, but I'm guessing that quite a few are. So I won't elaborate on a lot of the very, very basic, how do I get started stuff, but it is all covered in here. Basically, the questions are, you have something to sell. Is there a government organization out there that might be interested in buying that? And this is going to walk you through a series of 10 different areas that we look at in terms of helping your company get ready to do what we call contract ready to do business with the government. And then at the end, I'll talk about PTAC assistance and the things that we offer at no cost to you. So as we go through this, you're going to wonder, why would I want to go through all these hoops and all of the effort that it's going to take? Well, I think it's important to understand how huge this market is out there for the government. The federal government alone spent $4.4 trillion in 2019. And you can see here other organizations, and this is really just the tip of the iceberg, because there's more than one state out there, and within any state we have many, many counties and tons of municipalities, and they all have budgets. They all need things that they buy from businesses like yours. Except in rare cases, the federal government usually wants to purchase goods and services from companies that have been around for a little bit of time. They have a track record, and they have the resources to deliver. Right now, though, you might find that there are some exceptions being made because the government is looking for unique solutions to unique problems in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. So don't feel like just because you haven't been in operation for 2 or more years that you can't reach out to the government and try to sell them something if you have something that they need. They will be receptive. Procurement ready is a term that we use, and basically it means having your act together in all these different areas. These are basically internal policies that a company would have, but they lead to a series of plans that quite often the government wants to see: a safety plan or a management plan, things that are quality assurance plans, things like that. This is just kind of a starter list. It's not all inclusive, and every contract has a unique set of requirements in terms of what the government is going to want. So you want to read through your solicitation carefully and make sure you are able to produce those plans before you spend a lot of time and effort putting together a proposal and then realizing you don't have a quality assurance system in place, for example. So getting into the 10 areas here, first one is target audiences. There's a huge selection of opportunities out there. In the federal government alone, there are 15 major departments under the executive branch and hundreds of agencies, commissions, boards, and things like that, that all publish opportunities that companies can bid on. And then similarly, every state does the same thing, and all the counties, cities, villages, even down to in the state of New Mexico, you'll find opportunities for water co-ops and things like that. So there are lots of opportunities out there, but you want to also narrow down your target to an area that you can deliver to. You don't want to take on more than you can deliver. And so I'm not going to go through all those, but what I have been watching is opportunities that are coming out relevant to the COVID-19 pandemic. And these are some of the agencies that I'm seeing that are spending a lot of money right now. Health and Human Services, for example, second on the list there. I always put DoD first because I'm retired Air Force and I always think they're where it's at. But right now, Health and Human Services is where it's at. And they have an open pre-approved justification to spend up to $30 billion right now, and they're spending it. They've got a lot of contracts going out. They are also, when we get to it here in a few slides, the majority of the contracts are being issued here to companies in the state of New Mexico. And this is not an all-inclusive list, but these are some that are jumping out at me right now. And you can see why: CDC, FEMA, National Institutes of Health. Those are all have a lot of activity. It's important to be able to identify the products or services that you're offering the government. So suffice it to say, know what you're trying to sell before you approach a government buyer and try to, don't go in there with just a notion. Have something put together, even if it's just a diagram or an outline of what you're trying to do. It just will make it so much easier to communicate with them. And another thing that's important is the government buyers, they all talk in a language that we don't necessarily use every day, and it's built around a series of codes. There are federal codes, there are state and local codes. The General Services Administration has their own codes that are called special item numbers. I'm going to show you some examples of these over the next few slides, so I'll just kind of define them as we go here. On the federal side, we have what's called the North American Industry Classification System. You've probably heard this term. NAICS code is how we normally refer to it. There are 20 different classifications at the 2-digit level, but then it goes on down to about a little over 1,000 unique 6-digit codes. And everybody's company falls under one of these somehow or other. You're forced to categorize yourself as a company that fits into one of these many codes. At the bottom of the page here is a link where you can go find these. They're actually managed by the U.S. Census Bureau, but they are used by the SBA, and now they're going to be used by the General Services Administration as well. So I'll show you that. And everybody who buys on the federal side uses these codes to determine what type of product or service your company is offering. And then it gets even more specific when we get into the next level, which are what we call product service codes, or PSCs. This is another link here that you'll get all these slides afterwards, if I believe, and all the links in the PDF version of this will work. And if you have problems with any of that, certainly reach out to PTAC and we'll help you. But there are many, 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 I'm talking thousands of these codes when we get into this and the next slide, which is federal supply codes. So the product service codes are more service oriented. I highlighted the codes that go with letter B, which is special studies and analysis. And then there are many, many on the right-hand side that are not shown, that are just shred outs of all the different types of studies and analysis the government buys. And this goes on A through Z for the product service codes. And then on this next slide, you'll see if they start with numbers, these are product codes or supply codes, I guess, federal supply codes, but basically items that they buy. And I just highlighted some examples here in Sector 16, which is aircraft components for our normal workshop. I probably should have found something more applicable to what's going on in the world right now. But nonetheless, there is a section for medical equipment and supplies, and those are being used. We'll talk about some of those in a minute. And again, there are thousands of these codes. So this is just a quick slide that shows the General Services Administration, GSA, and how they've set up their codes. Under previous contracts, just last year still, they were using the structure on the left in the background there called the SIN, special item number, and now they're moving into this new multiple award schedule. So they're taking 24 or so GSA schedules and consolidating them all into one called the multiple award schedule, or MAS. And under that, now they've started using these category codes that you see in the foreground. Those are typically going to be related to your NAICS code, but then they may add letters like you'll see further down the page there for the environmental measuring instruments, for example, and the laboratory instruments. So you got to look at these carefully, and it's a little bit difficult right now to map between the old and the new. But again, your PTAC advisor can certainly help you with that. And there's a link at the bottom of the page too that will explain that further. And then when we get into the state and local governments, they use what are called the National Institute of Government Purchasing, or NIGP codes. And these are different again. At the bottom of this page is a link to a site where you can look these up. It's put out by the government of the District of Columbia in Washington. And it's a free site that you can go to and look them up. But typically what will happen, if you look at about the second line down there where it says 285-51-00, purchases are generally made at the 5-digit level, meaning that ends in 00. And they don't necessarily go down to 7 digits. These will go all the way out to 11 digits. So there's something like 250,000 of these codes. But I would focus more on the higher level ones because that's typically what you'll see if you go look at state or local government ads in the legals in the newspaper. You'll see these commodity codes. That's what they also refer to them as sometimes. So the whole point behind all of this is that it's important to kind of know what codes you're dealing with. And here's some examples of some that I found just in the last few days, searching contracts that are being awarded or opportunities that are out there where the government is looking to buy something. And so there's kind of the NAICS code on the left and the product service code on the right. And sometimes those codes are all numeric, so it would be equipment. Just throwing those out there as some examples that you might do a search on if you're looking for opportunities. If you provide temporary help, there's a lot of temporary help being hired right now by the federal government for a variety of things, and we'll show you some examples. Can't get my slide to go here. So while we're waiting for that slide to advance, the next topic is marketing strategy.
Steve, keep trying. It should work.
Okay. I've hit it about 3 or 4 times now, right, using the right arrow. Let me try the mouse. Maybe that'll. There we go.
I think that worked.
What's that?
That worked. You're good to go.
Okay, very good. Thank you. The next topic is marketing strategy. And basically, what we emphasize in our workshop is that you need to have a government marketing strategy. And there's a lot of things to consider here. So I'm not going to be able to belabor this. This is, we could go on for half an hour just on a good marketing strategy. But consider if you want to be a prime or a sub, or if you want a team. Do you just want to do local work, work your way up to federal, things like that, Don't bid on work in Florida if you don't have the means to get there to do it. Sometimes you have to start in your backyard. And then you want to do the analysis to find out what's out there that you could potentially be bidding on. And so here's a few sites at the bottom. Beta SAM we'll talk about more, that provides federal award data. The state of New Mexico has what's called the Sunshine Portal, and you can go in there and see who is getting contracts to do what. And then some of the city and county procurement websites will also have recent awards listed. A few other topics about marketing strategy. You need to know where to go and locate information. Procurement forecasts can be very valuable to see what is being planned. And I've seen these all over the place. Most of the federal agencies, if you hunt around on their website, you will find a procurement forecast. Even the city of Albuquerque puts out a quarterly forecast. So, use these to your advantage to kind of help line up your ducks in terms of what it is that you want to bid on that's going to be coming out in the next quarter or even the next year. There are different opportunities that are published, like requests for information, sources sought notices, where the government reaches out and tries to get information from industry to see who is interested and capable. Okay, now it's advancing for me, to do the work. And then at the bottom of that slide was also a list of various solicitation documents, invitation to bid, RFP, RFQ, things like that. Another part of marketing strategy is having the right tools, having some marketing materials that you can share with government buyers, whether it be a line card if you're offering products, or a capability statement explaining what you do. And then a list of some entities there that might be able to help you out. There are small business liaisons in a lot of the federal agencies, even right here local to Albuquerque, that you can go to and talk about, you know, what do they like to see, because they all have different ways that they'd like to see the information presented to them. Now, we offer government to business interactions periodically, a couple times a year at the PTAC, and that's a good opportunity to meet with some of these small business liaisons and find out really how things work. I think we're about wrapping up market strategy here. Just realize there are a lot of people involved in the game. It's not just one person. There's the OSDBUs, the Office of Small Disadvantaged Business Utilization. There are contracting officers, program managers, all sorts of people. In the state, we have chief procurement officers. There's over 400 of them, as I believe, throughout the state of New Mexico. They are all trained and certified. They have to recertify annually, I believe. And they're the ones that are in charge of, are responsible for, I should say, the control of procurement for items of tangible property, services, construction, all those sort of things, not just at the state level, but also at the local level. So as it relates to COVID, not a whole lot here on marketing strategy, but it still would not be a bad idea to update your materials if you already have them. You know, you may not be working at your normal address. Maybe you're working from home. You might have a different phone number you're using right now. Things like that. Don't be sending out materials that have information that isn't going to be relevant to what you're doing right now. Also, if you're retooling, maybe you were making air conditioners 2 weeks ago, and now you're going to try to build ventilators or something. You need to put that in there, and perhaps you're going to shut down the product line that you had running before until this is over, things like that. And also the codes we talked about earlier, be sure to update those and add any new ones for any new products. Contracting opportunities. There's a lot of sources out there that you can go to, and you need to basically go through these, take a look at them, and get registered for the ones that you're going to use. But beta.sam.gov, that first one on the list, is really where all the federal government opportunities are listed. I'm talking hundreds of thousands. Formerly, this was FedBizOps or FBO, and I'll show you a few more screens about that coming up in a minute. The state uses the State Purchasing Division under the General Services Department. I don't have the URL on there, but it's basically General Services, one big word, .state.nm.us. Excuse me. And that would be the way to go take a look at some of the things on their site. And I'll show you some screenshots of that as well. Then there are tribal entity sites like Navajo Housing Authority, for example, would be one. Various organizations within the Indian Health Service have their own websites, like the Navajo Area Indian Health Service. And then, of course, municipal and educational sites. And then there are some specialized sites that are probably not going to come into play right away. Certain agencies put out procurements that are sensitive or classified, so they have their own websites. They don't put them out on the FedBizOps. What else? Then there are some paid sites that you may end up having to go to for some state and local work. But sometimes there are other ways to get those opportunities if you just register with the entity that you're dealing with. And then, of course, PTAC, we offer something called Bid Match, and that taps into all these different levels. And that's a pretty useful tool. I've been monitoring it over the last week or so. just using the word COVID in my search, I'm getting anywhere from 40 to 60 hits every day of opportunities that are coming out. Now, they're not all new opportunities. Sometimes the word COVID will trigger because they put a clause in there saying they're going to delay a site visit because of the COVID-19 or things like that, or they've relaxed some requirement. But an awful lot of the ones that are coming out are for special requirements. So I mentioned Beta SAM. If you go to the old, if you have a bookmark for the old FedBizOps, it's just going to bring you to a screen like this that will take you into betasam.gov. And basically, this is the place to go to find solicitations and associated documents, amendments, changes to the solicitation, interested bidder lists, things like that. And then these are some additional opportunities or additional bits of information that are available on sam.gov, notably award listings and wage determinations if you're doing work that relates to Davis-Bacon or Service Contract Act. This is where you now go to find these. You don't go to the Department of Labor anymore. They're still managed by the Department of Labor, but the idea is to consolidate all of this information into a one-stop shop, so to speak. And so within SAM, Beta SAM, you can find a lot, different levels of information for different stages of procurement. So there are a lot of pre-solicitation notices go out. Right now, we're seeing a lot of sole source justifications and what's called a justification and authorization, I believe it is, a JNA, that says this is why we're not going to go out and compete this work. I'll talk about those in a minute. All solicitations over $25,000 typically are going to be found on Beta SAM, and that could be a request for quote, RFP, things like that. And then also the award data that I mentioned, you can go in there and search and see who's winning work in the areas that you're interested in to kind of get a feel for who the competition is, and also get a feel for what agencies within the government are awarding that kind of work. So, and there's going to be more data migrating over to Beta SAM soon in the terms of award. So there is a registration process you can go through. It's not necessary, but it does give you some additional ability to create and save search agents, follow opportunities, get email alerts, things like that. And it's basically the same login you use for SAM if you're already registered in SAM. A few other sites that are useful for learning about opportunities. You can look in the Federal Procurement Data System. I do a lot of research there. Part of that is migrating to Beta SAM this month, but I believe it's just a report generation tool that's going to be in there. So I still go back to the old FPDS link that I show here to actually look at work that's being awarded within the state or to a different companies, things like that. USA spending is another source. Here's a few headlines that I grabbed out of Beta SAM over the last week of different unique opportunities that are popping up because of the COVID pandemic. But everything from, Zoom software licenses for the National Institute of Health to building emergency construction of hospital units, things like that. Morgue attendants and mortuary attendants. These are some of the temporary help I was talking about. A lot of different things, and some of it's almost amusing, that they're putting out justifications for hand washing stations, but it's got to be done right now. And sanitization, basically these are janitorial contracts, but it's got a new twist to it because people have to be able to clean and sanitize to the standards that the Centers for Disease Control has put out. I've got a link to some of that coming up. This is a chart I just put together this morning that just shows the contracting actions that have gone to New Mexico-based companies strictly in support of COVID-20, or is it COVID-19? I'm sorry, I think I got that wrong. But COVID-related actions, there's a special code that the government puts on these contracts, and I ran a query just to see what's out there. So in the state of New Mexico, just in the last month, we've we've brought about $9.5 million worth of work to New Mexico-based companies. That work may not all be done here, but the companies are here. And some of these have $0 on them because it just hasn't been obligated yet. They haven't funded it yet. Some DOE and I think they're owed NASA. But for the most part, they're funding them as they go. And out of these numbers, basically, this is 36 contract actions here compared to over 4,300 nationwide. So there's a lot going on, and companies in New Mexico are only getting a small fraction of that. Out of our 9.5 million is a drop in the bucket out of the 6.4 billion that's already been awarded on contracts in this same time frame nationwide. So something to think about. There's a lot of work out there. A little further down into the weeds here is government marketing, a little more specific than having your marketing strategy is how you're going to work specifically with the government. And really a thing that they like to see are capability statements that include all the information and qualifications about your company. But you know, try not to exceed maybe 1 or 2 pages on this. It doesn't have to be real elaborate. Business cards and be, you know, basic stuff here, but also past performance. Anything that you've done that's relevant to the work you want to bid on, you want to be prepared to explain that. You're going to have to do it in your proposal anyway, but when you meet with government personnel or buyers before the solicitation comes out, then you want to be prepared to talk about that. And you also want to know who to go to in the government. Don't just run to the top, you know, director of a particular agency. You want to work down in the weeds sometimes with the program managers and the buyers. These are. I'm not even going to get into this. This is getting into some more, you know, less well-defined and harder to quantify type things. But they all have to do with the maturity of your organization as a company and how you can compete basically within that marketplace. From a COVID specific point of view, the landscape has changed quite a bit here over the last month or so. And I guess basically, you know, you want to do your homework, update your capability statement, some of the things we already talked about, any past performance that's relevant to what the government is looking for. But you want to highlight the characteristics they're looking for, which is responsiveness, reliability, product quality right now. These are key ingredients to anything that the government is trying to do. And at the bottom here is a link that will, you'll go down many, many rabbit holes if you go to this CDC website, but there's a lot out there about requirements and things that they expect you to comply with if you're going to do business in this environment right now. Registrations is another area that we at PTAC can help with all of these different registrations. I mentioned several times the system for award management, SAM. This is not beta SAM. This is SAM that you have to be registered in before you can bid on anything with the federal government, with the DOE labs like Sandia Labs, and many, even prime contractors are pretty much requiring that you be registered in SAM before they'll work with you. The SBA has a dynamic small business search tool that a lot of buyers use. It's only for small businesses, and that's where they go to find businesses that might be able to meet their needs. You also, if you're going to do work with the state, you want to get registered with GSD, and on the list goes. Even though you might be registered in SAM, you're still going to have special registrations for organizations like DOE and other federal agencies still require separate registration. So it's just something you got to kind of do your homework here to get ready if you're going to be able to bid on work. And even now, it's still going to be required. So SAM is the only way the government is able to reach out and pay you, for example. And that's the only way they're going to verify that you really are a company and you really are qualified to do business with them. So it's important to be in there. Next slide shows a little bit more about SAM. Basically, if you're not already registered in SAM and you Google the word SAM, you're going to get a whole list of companies that are wanting to offer to do this for you at a cost of up and over $1,000. That's not necessary. PTACs will get you registered in SAM. Generally, we can knock this out in an hour or two if everything is in order, and we don't charge for that. So if you're not registered, you need to reach out to nmptac.org, and we will get you set up and going. So these are some of the things, basically it's used to register you as a contract, but there are searches that can be done, things like that too, but we don't use it too much for that. The dynamic small business search is another tool I mentioned. This one belongs to the Small Business Administration. And we have absolutely talked to contracting officers who use this to go find businesses that they might be able to contract with. And they run a query, they're going to get a screen sort of like this next one, which is a list of companies. But a big red flag here is when companies have a blank for their capabilities narrative, then kind of the thought process is that you haven't figured out what you're doing yet, so they're going to move on to somebody that has something in there. So PTACs can help you get registered in the system as well. And when you do so, there's a place to put a capabilities narrative. There's a place to put keywords. And these keywords are what are typically used when the search is done by the government or by a large business, maybe looking for small businesses that they might be able to team with. Within the state, there's also a registration process with the purchasing division. Through that system, then you can get electronic notifications, you can submit your bids. You will have to know at least 1 or 2 commodity codes that you're going to be dealing with. So go back several slides to that link where you can go look those up because you will need those when you register. And then the state also offers preference certifications for in-state businesses or contractors, meaning construction, and the same thing for veteran businesses or contractors. The forms and details about that are found on the Tax and Revenue website at tax.newmexico.gov. This is just a screenshot of the, that's funny, the URL is hidden back there, but this is a screenshot of the General Services Department website. And the next slide, a little bit more detail about some of the things that you can find there. Moving that mouse. Commodity codes are listed out there. The statewide purchase agreements, you can find those on this website, and you can find when those are going to expire, when they're going to be up for renewal, things like that. There's a place there where you can get a list of all of the certified procurement officers throughout the state. And of course, active procurements. That's the big thing that people want to go in there and take a look at. So that's all on the GSD purchasing division portion of the GSD website. Just gives you a quick overview of what the CPOs do. Statewide price agreements, there are quite a few of these for commodities and services. So you definitely want to take a look at those. If you're selling janitorial supplies or something, there is a statewide price agreement for that, and you want to get on that if you want to be able to sell to many agencies throughout the state that buy off of those. Right now, we are seeing quite a few emergency and sole source purchases out of the state because of the current situation. And then there's the state use act, which also ensures that certain items are purchased from persons with disabilities through an organization that manages that. From a COVID perspective, you want to make sure you're registered with the appropriate agencies. These might be new to you if you haven't been doing business in a particular area before. So this is just a list of some of the different organizations or registrations that you might need, and we can certainly help you with that. So don't let this delay your bid or proposal, but jump on this first as soon as you know who it is that you might want to be doing business with. I'm going to jump over to regulations briefly. There's just a lot of different regulatory requirements when you're doing business with the government. Here's kind of a laundry list. And there's a lot of different sources that you might have to go to understand these. Just on the insurance alone, it could be errors and omissions, professional liability, general liability, aviation liability. And of course, if you're working on a military base or something, there's special requirements for automobile insurance and vehicle insurance. So you want to look into all of that, and federal acquisition regulations generally will have more detail on this, but the stuff's usually detailed in the solicitation that you're bidding on as well. But sometimes I'll just refer you to the FAR or the state procurement code or local ordinances, depending on who you're doing business with. So you want to make sure you're compliant. Again, you're going to spend a lot of money putting together proposals, and you don't want to waste that because you weren't ready to do business. Let's see, I'm having clicker trouble again. There we go. So in this current, under the current pandemic, we are seeing no changes to the regulatory requirements. And generally, they're relaxing them to allow more flexibility. The FAR, the Federal Acquisition Regulation, has a number of what we call deviations. These are temporary changes to the FAR to allow work to proceed. And you kind of see one that's really important is limitation on subcontracting, which basically says that if you're a small business, you have to do X% of the work. You can't sub everything out and just be kind of a shell company. Under the COVID rules right now, those limitations have been changed, let's say, to give you more flexibility in terms of putting together a team or having someone help you with the work. And then there's other sort of regulatory requirements. I noticed one the other day where the Department of the Navy, I believe it was, is requiring face protection for anybody working in any of their ship maintenance sites. I think that was the case in point. And there are other requirements out there about who can and cannot access certain federal facilities, military bases, things like that. So there is some work to be done relevant to that. Here's a list of acquisition sites that I put together, or acquisition related, I should say, from the federal government on down to include FEMA, CDC, a link there on pricing and contracting, which is the next topic, I believe. But you'll get all these links. Pricing with the federal government is all about fair and reasonable, so I'm going to have to move it along here. And here are some specific references to the FAR that have to do with cost segregation, cost analysis, things like that the government does. And then specifically Part 12 of the FAR is for commercial items. And right now they are buying a lot of commercial items, you know, face masks, gowns, things like that, equipment for the hospitals. A lot of that is commercial. Specific to COVID, just remember, fair and reasonable pricing is still required and expected by the government. But you do want to understand how pricing fits into a particular contract. You might be bidding on something that's firm fixed price that you've never done before. That's priced one way, different than a cost plus contract, for example. Pay a close attention if you have wage determinations on an existing contract and you're having to move that location of work. It might change how you have to pay your people, and thus it may impact your pricing that's already been turned in. So that's a topic that would have to be taken up with the government. Taxes, don't forget, gross receipts still required, and those payments of gross receipts taxes has not been waived in anything that I have seen yet. While other taxes have been pushed out to July due dates, gross receipts tax continues on. I'm going to just kind of flip through these few slides on accounting systems and basically follow generally accepted accounting principles that are set up by the Standards Board, and that will help you stay out of trouble. The Defense Contract Audit Agency, I put a link out here. They have a number of checklists and tools that you can use. Ultimately, you need a system that's going to allow you to segregate your costs, separate direct and indirect, things like that, accumulate costs by contracts and contract lines, and ultimately be able to generate compliant invoices. You can't get paid if you can't generate an invoice that the government will accept. And just some suggestions that I came up with here on COVID. Basically, if you're doing anything unique because of the situation we're in right now, and I suspect a lot of you are, you might want to set up unique numbers to track that. Special training, retooling, special materials, testing, things like that. If you've got people sitting around on government contracts that aren't able to go in and work, but they might be getting paid, You probably want to account for that time separately because questions will be asked down the road, and it would be good to know what was done under which set of rules. And also be careful about duplicate payments. So if you're getting a contract payment and nobody's going to work, and then you're also getting an SBA payment, say under the Paycheck Protection Program or something, be careful about double dipping there. That could get you in trouble. So you want to read the rules, consult with your lawyer, whatever you have to do to understand that. But these are just some red flags that I see, things that I see will be coming up as problems down the road for people possibly. There are many different types of contracts. They depend on how you're paid or the structure of the contract. Firm fixed prices used quite a bit for services, but then these other types, cost plus and time and materials, it just really depends on the type of work the government is looking for and how they want to structure that contract, and then that will impact how you're paid and how you receive, for example, your profit or fee. And then there are different structures just depending on anything from a government-wide acquisition contract, which is used for all over the world, basically, to buy your products or services, to maybe a specific standalone contract or letter contract, something like that. Right now, I think what you'll see is some maybe new and different types of contracts. Other transactional authorities, or OTAs as we call them, are used for streamlined acquisition, in particular for research work and to develop prototypes. So if you're developing a prototype of some new and unique ventilator, you might be able to get one of these type of contracts. And it does cut through a lot of red tape. It avoids, just gets around a lot of the federal acquisition regulation clauses. You may have something as simple as a letter contract. Emergency sole source procurements are a big deal. Quite a few of those coming out on the state purchasing site for various cities, school districts, things like that all around the state are posting their emergency and sole source procurements out there. So here's a couple of clauses that I thought are important. FAR 8.405, basically urgent and compelling need. So that's just saying, hey, we're using this clause to get around going through normal ordering procedures because we can't afford the delay. And then the state section 13-1-127 of the NMSA does allow the purchasing agent or their designee to make emergency procurements if there's threat to public health. So those two are being used quite a bit right now. So I think that's the 10 topics we went through. Again, some contract ready questions, but right now, if you're doing some kind of an emergency or sole source type procurement, you want to just move forward with it as best you can and get some help on these things as needed. But do realize if you can't generate a compliant invoice right off the bat, you could very well wait 90 days or more for your payment. So you've got to have some way to keep your operation going while you're waiting for that to go through. Now, with some of the electronic systems today, and if your system is tight, you can get those in and get paid in 30 days or less even. So this takes me to the final part of this, PTAC. Basically, we are funded through a cooperative agreement with DLA, the Defense Logistics Agency, and then a matching grant also from the state. So we offer a lot of different types of counseling and training. All of our services are free of charge. Under the current rules right now, we are still operating, but we're not operating out of our normal offices. We're working from home using all of our counselors are still gainfully employed and helping clients every day. We're using Zoom and other web services to do this. Attending, there's a lot of seminars and webinars and things going on, so we're trying to keep up with everything that's going on right now. And we are still looking at planning some late summer events. So our workshops and our training events will resume eventually. We just don't have it scheduled right now. We are still clinging to a plan for a government to business event in August for state and local government with a prep class a week prior to that. If those end up getting canceled, then certainly there will be notices going out. And if you're registered with PTAC and you're on our mailing list, you'll hear all about it. These are just some of the workshops that we offer. You'll see that first one there is the Introduction to Government Contracting Basics, basically the material I just went through, but double the time. A number of other workshops. Cybersecurity is a very popular one right now because everybody is having to get compliant with those requirements. And we offer our Contract Ready 5-part series at the bottom there, which goes through the whole process from solicitation through contract administration, basically. And that's done in a series of classes over the course of, usually over the course of a couple weeks, but it just depends on who we're working with. We offer that around the state, and typically we'll have it in a classroom environment in Albuquerque twice a year at least. We do help with federal certifications, but our next speaker is going to go into this in much more detail. So I will just gloss on past this slide, but then realize that we can help you with any of these as well. Also, the state preferences. We are experienced in helping fill these forms out. They're not very complicated. You probably knock those out in a heartbeat on your own with a little help. Here's kind of how we're set up. We've got offices in 4 cities. We have 2 offices in Albuquerque. A few of us work out of the CNM Workforce Training Center on the north end of town, but we also have one counselor who works out of the Hispano Chamber in downtown Albuquerque. And then we have a counselor in Clovis, one in Las Cruces, one that works out of Santa Fe, and our management team is split between Santa Fe and Albuquerque. We also work at any of the number of small business development centers around the state. There's a list of those. Our benefits, our services benefit everybody involved, basically, from the government professionals, procurement professionals, to the small businesses, as you can see. Kind of a quick roadmap. Left side of the screen are the 5 steps that we go through to get people set up. And then kind of starting up here at market research, this little circle is our continuous learning and training that we offer. Finally, I think I've got a couple slides here, maybe just this one with some links to PTAC, SBDC, other organizations that can help you. Just for reference, there's the Small Business Administration at the bottom. I'm sure lots of people are trying to get a hold of them right now because of the various programs that we're all having difficulty with, but rest assured they're all working at it hard, and there's going to be changes coming out in the next week or so to some of those programs that will hopefully help those of you who aren't able to get your PPP loan or your EIDL. We'll see where that goes with the considerations that are coming out of DC right now. And that's it for me. So here's my contact information. Feel free to call or email me. At the bottom there is our central website, and you can find all of the counselors listed on that website if you want to reach out to someone other than me for assistance. That's it. I guess we'll take questions later on, so I'm going to turn it, go off mic here and turn it back over to Joanna.
All right, thank you so much, Steve. That was great information. And we're getting some really good questions. Please keep those coming. Write your questions in the right-hand box, and we will get to those. So I want to introduce Roxanne Rivera-Wiest. I hope I am pronouncing that right, Roxanne. I'm sorry about that. And so if you can go ahead and, let's see, let me see if I need to unmute you. Do you have audio, Roxanne? All right, I just unmuted you. Yes, we can hear you right now. And then you should have control over the slides, so go for it.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for allowing me to present. I am going to be very, very quick, but my name is Roxanne Rivera-Wiest. I am President, Executive Director of Government Business Technology Consultants, better known as GovBizTech. And I'm going to be talking to you today about a couple of topics. We are going to be talking a little bit about the SBA certifications that Stephen touched on. I'm also going to talk very, very briefly on opportunity zones, and then I will turn it over to my colleague, Chris Downey, who is going to talk about the SBA Bond Guarantee Program, which is a wonderful program that a lot of people need to take advantage of. So if you are a socially and economically disadvantaged, small disadvantaged, or minority business enterprise, you have the opportunity to apply for and receive your SBA, 8A, or other minority business certifications to include veteran-owned, service-disabled, veteran-owned, women-owned. However, getting certified in these areas require meeting statutory requirements and presenting proof to the SBA that your business is qualified to enter into one of these programs. Now, the SBA will conduct a detailed analysis that can be a little heady to navigate on your own. And once you're certified in one of these areas, you will, as Stephen touched on, need to market your business to the federal government and to be able to gain the knowledge required as a government contractor. And that's where GovBizTech consultants can help you. Because as applicants for these designations, you will need to overcome complex issues related to net worth requirements, control, affiliation concerns, and also you will need to develop working business plans and assist in developing substantive business development strategies. So first of all, let's talk about the 8A certification. The 8A program is a 9-year program. So 9 years can go by very, very quickly. You want to be able to hit the ground running when you get involved with this program, especially here in New Mexico. We only have 85 8A companies, which we have a lot of room to be able to add 8A companies because in New Mexico, because of the national labs, a lot of other, our bases that we have here in New Mexico, there's a lot of opportunity for 8A contractors. And this program was designed to develop businesses owned and run by socially and economically disadvantaged individuals. The goal of this program is to allow businesses to be able to compete in the government contracting world. And eligibility is based on the following. 51% of your business must be owned and controlled by the socially disadvantaged individual. And this does not only mean 51% on paper. This means that you, as the 51% owner, need to be involved in the business on a day-to-day basis. So you need to be running the company. You must be an American citizen. Your net worth must be less than $250,000. Your gross income for the 3 years prior to application must be less than $250,000, and you must be able to prove your social and economic disadvantage. You also need to be current on all of your financial obligations. You must be of good character, and you must be a small business based on the North American Industry Classification System, the NACE size for size standards. You also need to meet 3 points. You need to have at least one distinguishing feature that has contributed to your social and/or economic disadvantage. You must have personally experienced substantial and chronic social disadvantage, and this has contributed regarding your inability to enter into the business world, or having, you've had to overcome some issues into getting involved in the business world. The good thing about the 8A program is that if you have a niche, you do have to have a primary NACE code and a secondary NACE code. But if you are able to develop a niche, you're able to get sole source contracts with the government. And there are also competitive bids with 8A. So what is a minority-owned concern? Well, according to the FARs, there are a number of minorities that can be listed as minority-owned business concerns that can apply for 8A status. Among them are Hispanic-owned, Native American-owned, African-American-owned, Asian-American-owned, and also minority women-owned. So if you are one of those, if you are one of those ethnic groups, then you have the capability to be able to apply for this. U.S. federal agencies also set aside contracts specifically for women and veteran-owned businesses. And in order to qualify for this certification, like the 8A, your company must be a small business that is owned and controlled 51% by either a woman or a veteran, and this includes service-disabled veterans. Again, as the 51% owner, you do need to be running the company. You need to be there on a day-to-day basis. And this is something that is checked on by the Small Business Administration, so you do need to make sure that that is what you are doing. There are other qualifications that you need to meet for veteran-owned and women-owned, but this is by far the largest. And if you want any other information on these certifications, please reach out to me. We are GovBizTechConsultants.com. You can also call me. My phone number is on our website, and I'm happy to visit with you about these. I'm going to talk a little bit about HUBZones. And HUBZones is a program that is designated to provide economic development in historically underutilized business zones. The HUBZone program promotes economic development and employment in distressed areas by providing access to federal contracting opportunities. If you do business in a designated HUBZone, you may be eligible for this certification. And I did not put the map on any of my slides. To find out if you are in a HUBZone, you need to go to sba.gov/HUBZone/maps. It's a pretty complicated map, but you're able to drill down. You're able to drill down to your specific county to find out if your business is currently located in a HUBZone. So to be eligible for a HUBZone certification, your firm must be a small business based on the North American Industry Classification System, the NACE for size standards. Your business has to be 51% owned by a U.S. citizen or a Native American Indian tribe, to include Alaska Native corporations. And you must have your principal office in the HUBZone. Also, 35% of your employees must live within the HUBZone. What is great about this HUBZone certification is that it gives you preference on certain federal contracts to include sole source contracts, plus a 10% advantage on competitive contracts, which is huge. And another thing that you need to know is that Congress gives a certain amount of money every year. They commit it to HUBZones, and only half that amount of money is typically committed to HUBZones is typically ever given out, which means there are not a lot of companies that are applying for this HUBZone certifications, and it's a great opportunity for you. So go into sba.gov/HUBZone/maps and check and see if you are located in the HUBZone. There are a number of HUBZones throughout the state of New Mexico. Now, you do need to recertify every 3 years. However, there is no limit on how long you can recertify. You can recertify for the life of your business. And this is unlike the 8A certification, because 8A is a 9-year program. However, if you do certify as a veteran-owned or a woman-owned, that can be for the life of your business as well. I know this is very quick, but again, if you have any questions, you can get a hold of me through our website, which is GovBizTechConsultants.com. I'm now going to talk a little bit about qualified opportunity zones and how you can make the most out of this investment tool. On January 1st, 2017, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act became law and represents one of the largest tax break packages in American history. This act contains significant changes to income tax, tax brackets, tax processes, and it also created opportunity zones. Now, what is an opportunity zone? An opportunity zone is a census tract in each state that suffers substantial economic depression, defined as a poverty rate of 20% or a median family income at or below 80% of the median statewide. And what the Opportunity Zone program does is it provides federal tax incentives for investing capital gains in qualified opportunity zones, which will offer the deferral, reduction, and possibly the exclusion of tax on future capital gains. So how do these zones benefit businesses? New Mexico has designated 63 qualified opportunity zones in 22 different counties in the state, and that's out of 33 counties. Now, you can go on nmopportunityzones.com and you will find this map, and the orange and the purple are the opportunity zones. And if you hold your mouse over each of the individual opportunity zones, you will see what type of economic development is going on in each opportunity zone. It's a very cool map. So if you want to find out if you are in an opportunity zone, go to nmopportunityzones.com and click on the map. So again, how do these zones benefit businesses? The tax benefit zones offer outweigh almost every other type of investment. This package of tax incentives has already begun attracting investors, meaning that there's more money going into these areas, which means more business. Now, this is a secondary benefit when compared to the staggering amount of financial gain a business can see if you invest in a zone or if you're located in the zone. This dynamic and multifaceted appeal is the variety of tax benefits that are available to businesses, which will enable you to successfully combat your tax liability in a number of ways. So if you have the capability of relocating your business to an opportunity zone, or if you are already in an opportunity zone, you can take advantage of tax incentives and a deferral or a complete elimination of any capital gains tax. So in order to qualify as a qualified opportunity zone business, at least 50% of your business must take place in the opportunity zone. Also, your tangible property, whether owned or leased, must be in a qualified opportunity zone, and at least 50% of the employee's hours must be worked in the opportunity zone, and or 50% of the company's services must be in opportunity zones. But this is a great thing to be able to take advantage of. New Mexico is just learning about these qualified opportunity zones. So to make sure to find out if you're either in an opportunity zone already, or if you maybe at some point you'll be able to relocate to an opportunity zone or open a second office in an opportunity zone, then you can take advantage of all of these benefits. So at this time, I am done, and I will turn it over to my colleague.
Hello? Hello? Hello?
We can hear you.
Oh, okay,
we can hear
good.
you.
Sorry, good. Okay, excellent. Hi, my name is Chris Downey. I am a surety bond agent, and I've recently also been spending my time with helping GovBizTech, and so anyway, that's why I'm here today. I'm here to talk about surety bonds. And so, how do I move the mouse or the screen?
Roxanne is actually going to do it for you.
Okay.
So
okay.
She'll just
good.
say next slide, Chris.
Next slide, then. Okay. We'll go into the next slide. One more. Roxanne? Can we go to the next slide? Hello?
Here, I'll go ahead and do it, Chris.
Sorry.
I'll try to do it. Let's see.
Sorry.
Okay. And there is a slight delay when I do it, so just FYI.
That's fine. I'll tell you when we're ready. So this is the first part of the presentation, and basically the question is, what is a surety bond? And if you are a federal contractor, you will encounter surety bonding, and it is a requirement for all Miller Act projects, and we will certainly get into that as we go through the presentation. But so what is a surety bond? Basically, it is a guarantee. My word is my bond. And the surety world is something that has been around for a really, really long time. The earliest known suretyship contract was written on a Mesopotamian tablet. And according to this contract, a farmer could not take care of his fields because he was drafted into the king's army. And so another farmer said, while you're gone, I will work the fields. And the two agreed to split the profits. And so a local merchant served as the world's first known surety by guaranteeing that the second farmer would keep his word. Surety in law first showed up at about 670 BC in the Code of Hammurabi. So this has been around for a while. And we in our modern form, it basically is the surety becomes a third party to your contract with the government. And so there's three players now. There's the business owner, the principal. Then there is the surety, which will guarantee that the principal will do what they are going to do. And then the obligee is the project owner or the government. There are a bunch of different types of bonds. We've got the bid bond, the performance, the payment, and the maintenance. And we're going to get into those in the next slide. But basically, you really want to use surety. Surety is not an ILOC or a cashier's check, which is another way that you can back your bid. But if you outlay that ILOC or that cashier's check, you don't have that money in your business working for you, which is where we want the money. Next slide, please. Okay, so here we go into a little bit more definitions. Your bid bond is typically with the federal government. Your bid bond is a 20% bid bond. So we are guaranteeing 20% of your bid that you will enter into the contract at the price that you bid that you will enter into it. If you don't, then there's that 20% of your bid that's available to the government to use to go to the next bidder. If your bid is accepted, then you will post a performance and a payment bond. Typically, these bonds go together. Your performance bond says that you will perform to the specs of the contract. And the payment bond says that you will pay all of your subs, suppliers, and laborers under your contract. And if you don't, then those people can file claims against the bond. Now, sometimes projects will go on beyond a year. Most bonds, the maintenance period on the performance bond is a year. Sometimes the requirement for that maintenance performance goes beyond a year, at which point then after the project, we will address that with a maintenance bond. Next slide, please. Common definitions, which we covered kind of in the beginning briefly. These are the parties to a surety contract, which we covered before, so I'm not going to belabor it. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, now this slide is about what is the surety looking at? The surety isn't going to just give bonds to anybody. So what are they looking at? First, they're looking to see that you've got a track record, that you've got an ability to do the job. Maybe you've done a job similar to the job that you want to do, that you've got experience. They also want to see that you've got the financial ability to get into the project and see the job through. Finally, they check credit resources. So your credit report is very important, as well as your relationship with your bank and your suppliers. Next slide, please. So then getting into that, the financial piece, and again, I'm really doing a light view here, but the financial piece, one of the most important ratios in your financial statement is your working capital. Working capital, which you'll see the calculation there, but basically working capital is your current assets minus your current liabilities. Surety companies will consider half of inventory, which is typically a current asset item. But anyway, the working capital is really what determines your work program as far as surety goes. And so that's a very, very important thing, which is why I'm pointing it out. Next slide, please. Now, this slide is here to talk about bank support, and this is all a tease into the SBA bond guarantee program, because that is something that is very important to help you get surety. So I put this slide in there to encourage everybody to think, if you don't have a banking relationship, if you currently don't have a line of credit, call the bank, find a bank, start working on that. And my advice is always get whatever they will give you and keep growing it as you grow your company. Next slide, please. Okay, we did touch on this a little bit earlier too. Why are bonds required? And basically it's the Miller Act. The federal government, any job over $150,000 has to be bonded, and that lower limit is actually increasing in different sectors. And then your state government, local government, city, counties, they fall under state Miller Acts or little Miller Acts. At which point those are what require the bonds, and the bonds are of course there to protect the government money and the taxpayer. Every once in a while, you will come across a private scenario where a developer or a development or somebody's building a building and they want that bonded and guaranteed. Less common. It's very less common. Next slide, please. Okay, so in the world of surety, how do you maximize your surety credit? Obviously, we touched on working capital, and that's important. You'll see that there in the first note. Really, the best way to maximize your surety credit is to grow your company. The retained earnings in the company are very important. So as your company grows, your surety bond line will grow. And so those are the things: working capital, net worth, debt to net worth. Those are all factors that the surety companies look at. The other thing that is really important to help grow your surety line is to have a CPA, and to have them prepare CPA financial statements. We'll get into the different levels when we get into the SBA bond guarantee program, but a CPA is really an important relationship to have for your business. Next slide, please. Okay, here we are. We're at the SBA bond guarantee program, and so why this is really important is because it is available to people that can't get bonds in the regular market. And the trick that the SBA has that the regular surety market doesn't have is that they will allow your bank line of credit to be considered working capital. So that's really an important thing to know. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, the SBA has been assisting small and emerging businesses obtaining surety bonds since '72. The SBA can help many businesses, including startups, anybody less than 3 years. Most regular surety companies won't write bonds for you unless you've been in business for 3 years. Firms with limited financial resources, tough cash position, challenged working capital, or challenged network positions. Firms with recent losses in the surety world, if you have had 2 years of losses in the last 3 years, that's an instant reason to not get a bond in the surety world. Firms with a limited track record, say you're looking at a large project that might be double the size of the largest project that you've ever done before. That makes a lot of surety companies nervous, at which point the SBA will consider some of these things for you. Firms with compromised credit issues, we'll get into the fast bond program that the SBA has, but that is a great vehicle to get surety bonds if you have a really challenged personal credit score. And firms just really wishing to increase their bond size and bond limits. Next slide, please.
Hey, Chris.
Yes.
We're going to have to wrap it up shortly too. To have
That's
questions.
I'm burning through. Yes.
All right. Thank you.
this slide is less important. This is just what the guarantee, the SBA provides the guarantee to the surety companies, between 80 and 90% guarantee on any losses that the sureties sustain. Next slide, please. Basically, these are the size of individual bonds that they will write. They're all based on your NAICS codes. So for like landscape firms, you know, the largest in revenue for them. So anyway, that differentiates the small and large business as far as the SBA is concerned for the bond guarantees. So as long as your company within the NAICS codes is under those limits, you're good to go. Next slide, please. The surety bond guarantee program can write the largest bond, and this is mostly for general contractors, is $6.5 million. But for a federal entity, they can go up to $10 million with the approval of the contract officer. Let's go to the next slide. This is the quick app, and this is important to go over. This is up to bonds up to $250,000. They don't drill down really hard on your credit score. They do pull a credit score, but there's no limit on what your credit score needs to be as to whether or not you can get bonds. So basically this, for contractors getting started, this is a really important program because you can get bonds up to $250,000. Next slide. This here, which is just for your future reference, these are what you need, what the bond agent is going to ask you for when you call them and tell them you need a bond. And the forms at the bottom are the forms that the SBA requires if you go through the SBA bond guarantee program. Next slide, please. Finally, we get down to the fees. The SBA just changed its fee last fall. I want to say October time. It used to be 0.729. It's now down to 0.6. The surety will also charge a premium on top of that. The next slide, if you don't mind going there, should show just how that cost is calculated. There's an example right there of a $500,000 federal contract. The surety bond premium, mind you, is going to vary from contractor to contractor. Next slide, please. And then finally, when you've got to pay that 0.6 fee, the SBA has this way of going online and just paying it direct. It's a great improvement on how they've done things. Next slide, please. And this is how you would locate an SBA bond provider. That's the link there. I went on that, and unfortunately, there's only one agent with a 505 area code on that list. I would also recommend, you're welcome to call me, GovBizTech, and we can put you in line with a surety agent or answer any questions that you need. Next slide, please.
All right. Thank you so much, Chris, and thanks, Roxanne. Also, thanks to Stephen. We're getting really close to the 12:30 mark and don't want to take up any more of your time. But again, I just want to thank our panelists for the fantastic information. This was a record amount of slides that we went through today. So thanks for hanging in there, and thanks to the panelists. Please, if you have questions, go ahead and get those in. We did have a question from Laura. She asked early on, she is a self-employed grants writer. Do the state, cities, or counties or federal government ever contract with individuals? If Steve, if you want to take that question.
Well, yes, they do contract with individuals, assuming that you're set up as like a sole proprietor business, registered with SAM, have a DUNS number and a cage code and those sort of things. But it's certainly possible. I would suggest that you do a careful search for that type of work to find out who actually offers or who actually goes out there and solicits that kind of support.
Okay, great. Thank you. We got a lot of questions about will the presentation be available? And yes, want to remind everyone that we will send the link to the recording out as well as a PDF. So no need to worry about that. We had a question from Chris that came in. How long does it take to become 8A certified? Do you want to take that, Roxanne?
Yes, it usually, to get everything filled out and get everything into the SBA, usually takes, based on what you have already assembled in terms of your documentation, it can take anywhere from, approximately 3 to 6 weeks to get everything in, and then it is taking 90 days to get approval at this point.
Okay, great. And we had one other question geared at 8A. This question was from Tracy, and this is you kind of hit on this earlier about the needs to be owned by at least 50% of that minority group to prove 8A status, or 51, I should say. This is saying how is it handled when a business is owned by a spouse? How do you prove control? And there is a little bit of echo in someone's computer.
Okay, well, if it is a business that is owned by a married couple, the person who is the 51% owner has to be the person that is in the business on a day-to-day basis. So one of the spouses can own 49%, but the majority owner, the 51% owner, has to be the one that is in daily control of the business.
Great, thank you. And then we got a question about NAICS codes. All of our panelists mentioned the importance of NAICS codes. Steve, do you want to remind people how they can figure out what their NAICS code is?
Yes, there's a link in the slides, first of all, that you can follow. It's at the bottom of the slide that had the sample NAICS codes on it. And if you go to that website, you can just type in a keyword. If you do construction, type in construction, and that'll get you started. It'll bring up a bunch of them, and then you can start drilling down on them from there. A lot of times it'll just show you a summary at the top, but if you scroll down on the page, there'll be a whole list of 6-digit NAICS codes that relate to that topic. The other thing you can do is go to the Small Business Dynamics Search website that I mentioned, DSBS, and there's a link to that on slide 35 in my set. If you go in there and look up other companies that you know of who do the same type of business as you, then you can go look at their profile and see what NAICS codes they are using, and then go look those up and see if they're appropriate. Or you can call your PTAC rep and we can walk you through all that.
Okay. All right. That's a good point. So, and then Chris, do you want to remind folks how people can get a hold of you? Do they go?
Yes, yeah. They can go through Roxanne at GovBizTech. I will give you my cell phone. That number is 505-228-3913. Again, 505-228-3913. I'm happy to talk to anybody about any surety question they may have.
Wonderful. Thank you. And I believe we have Steve and Roxanne's contact information in the slides. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up. But again, really want to thank the panelists for this excellent information. This was just the tip of the iceberg. A lot more to dive into, but want to reiterate the point that was brought up about a lot of opportunities are out there related to government contracting that New Mexicans can be taking advantage of. So thank you again. We will follow up, and please reach out to these resources. And thank you for all the work that you're doing, panelists. Take care.
Joanna, thank you.